I'm Phyllis Gwenda Alexander, ní Bowyer, born in Trethomas in a little village in South Wales in 1941. My father was Norman James Bowyer, and he was born in Bristol in 1898. My mother was Florence Victoria Bowyer, and she was born in 1901 in Old Sobry, Chippen Sobry. I was the youngest child of 7 children. Well, there was Les, who was the oldest, then there was Hazel, then there was Robert, who unfortunately died when he was 1.5 years, and then there was Royden, then John, Marjorie, and myself. I slept in the one big bedroom. Me and my sister, Marjorie, we shared a bed, and my mother and father were in another bed in the same room. And my brother John Royden was in the back bedroom, and my granddad was in the front bedroom. It was pretty hectic, with all children arguing and whatever, like children do. I used to play up the pits, going down the side of them on an old tin bin, go home to my mum. We used to play up in the fields. In the woods, they used to have a river, and as you say, it'd be dammed up, and the girls would be at one end and the boys with the other. And sometimes used to spy on the lovers. And just getting up to just mischief, really, you know. My grandfather, Uncle Alf, he helped to build the Severn Tunnel, going through Monmouthshire up towards Wiltshire. He worked there. But Grandad, he used to love his allotment, and in the garden we used to have chickens and a couple of geese. We had lots of fruit and vegetables. And yeah, we were very lucky in the war years in the fact that the council houses had big gardens, and you utilised those gardens as best as you could, you know. The toilet was outside, and then there was the coal bunker next to it. And when we had the coal delivered, it was always on the main road, and then Grandad and somebody else to help him to shovel all the coal and put it into the coal bunker out the back. Then next to that was the toilet. But when my brother came out back from the RAF when he was doing national service, he became an electrician, and he put a light into the toilet, which we thought was so posh. But when we didn't have it, I used to be just frightened. I had to take a candle in with me. So we had to, you know, go to the toilet that way before we had the electric light. Going upstairs, especially in the winter months, be icicles on the window frame, and we used to put wooden pegs in the actual windowsill to stop them from rattling through the night. And then in the morning we'd have icicles hanging down, and we'd be so cold and we couldn't wait to go downstairs to sit in front of the fire. So we had a cinema at the top of the road, and I used to go there for the matinee on a Saturday, and Mum would allow us to go, me and my sister Marge, but we had to do a couple of jobs. My sister Marjorie had to go down to the shop, and then I had to brush up the crumbs off the floor. And then Mum would give us a little bit of money to go to the cinema, and if we couldn't afford sweets, I used to suckle on an oxo cube. But we loved it, you know, and kids, we always sat down the front because we couldn't afford to sit in the back. So we're down the front, and then when we're sitting there, before anything comes on, somebody'd be playing on the organ, and he'd come up from the depths and come up, playing the organ till the picture comes on, you know, and then he'd go back down again. And we'd all be so happy and singing and shouting, and God knows what else we used to do. The village was a proper mining village. The hotel would used to go off, and that means the miners have to get up. And the men would go off around about 6 in the morning. My father was one of them, and he worked in the pit. Mum would get him his box ready. He used to have like a little tin box, and she'd put something in it for him. And he'd go, and then he'd be in the depths of the mine, boring, with dry boring they called it. And it's through dry boring that my father lost his eye. The men would come home from work and Mum had to have the bath ready for him in front of the fire so that he could be washed down. And then us children had to go out while my dad was having his bath. They used to have donkeys down there, and the donkeys, they'd only see the light of day in the summer months when it was the 2 weeks of holiday, and they'd see the light of day for 2 weeks, and then they were back down again. And then, of course, we'd all have a 2-week summer holiday, and the miners used to give us £0.50, and we used to have the charaban, which you call is a bus, and they used to take us to Barry Island, which is a seaside town, all full of excitement. And then we'd go and spend our money. We used to run down to the sea in our woolen swimming costumes, what Mum made. You can imagine it with wool. You go in the water and it all just sink down. You put on a swimming costume, it's so wet with the water that it was heavy, and we had to keep trying to pull it up and squeeze the water out. And then we'd come back and Mum would be looking for us. And then we'd come home on the bus and I was as sick as a dog with all what I'd eaten. I started school at 3 and then I left at 15. My school was Tinnerwern, and my first memory of my first day in school was I had to do some colouring, and it was of The Ugly Duckling. And that's when I met my lifelong friend, Marion. And I did like art and geography and things like that. And then I left school and I wanted to do an apprenticeship for hairdressing. My mum couldn't afford it because my father died when I was 5. So she had to bring the rest of us up. And money was pretty short and tight, you know. She worked damn hard, you know, and looked after us well. But I wanted to do this apprenticeship and my mum said, I'm sorry, I can't afford it. So I went and worked in Sherman's Pools factory. I had to catch 2 buses and a train to get there. And I was 15 at the time. And I always remember I used to pass the cobblers. And in the cobblers, there was a pair of red shoes in the window. And they were quite high-heeled, they were. But I thought, oh, I'd like to have them. So I went in to see him and he said, well, I'll put them away for you, but you have to give me something every week until you pay them off, which is as long as I was in the factory. So anyway, I finally got those red. I couldn't wear them. I ended up, my sister-in-law bought them off me because I couldn't wear them. They're too high. But from there on then I went to Woolworths, worked in Woolworths. And I always remember being always wanted to be on the sweet counter, but I didn't. I ended up on the electric counter, which was selling bulbs, you know, and things like that. While we were in Woolworths, when it was at lunchtime, we used to go to the fish and chip shop opposite, and we used to have pie and chips. Oh, and it was lovely, that pie and chips. Oh, beautiful. And then from there, I went to the Home of Colonial, and then from there, I went to Trethomas and worked in Miss Wookie's greengrocers, and she showed me how to fillet fish. The innards, when you take the innards out, you could, if it's the hard egg roe or the soft roe, I could keep that and take it home for my mum to have. And we had that, and then from there, I joined the Wrens. I went in the Wrens when I was 17. I only stuck it for 3 weeks, even though my family were all military. I did stick it, so I came back to Wales and I went to work in another factory, which was a clothing factory. Then I was there, and then from there I then went into Warner's Holiday Camp in 1969, and then I met a young fella, and he was from Cirencester, and he came all the way in his Renault Dolphin car and picked me up and brought me home. And then I joined the NAFI, and I went to HMS Dauntless, which was an RAF camp outside of Portsmouth, and I enjoyed working there. But the district manager said, no, you're not staying here, Phil. It was an RAF camp, and I worked in the shop. And I said, no, I don't want to leave here. I like it here. He said, I'm sorry. He said, no. He said, the position isn't for you here. You're coming to Gosport. You had to go over on the ferry to Gosport. And when I looked at the camp, oh, it was horrible. And I thought, oh, don't leave me here. I said, I don't want to stay here. And he said, oh, you'll be all right, Phil. He said, he's supposed to come back. He said, if you're not happy when I come back, he said, I'll move you. Well, he didn't come back, did he? So in the meantime, I met your grandfather. He had to go home to Ireland because his mother was very ill. And then he came back in the April, and we got engaged in the April and got married July the 1st. But I mean, we were always playing. I used to go to Birch Grove, playing with the children there. Things we used to get up to, you know. Or we used to go nut picking up the Combe. The Combe was a road going up the pits. And we used to go and pick nuts. And then we used to come back. And one day we came back and we went and scrumped apples in this man's back garden. And we were on top of this shed. And he came out with a gun. And he said, you get rid of you kids, he said. What are you doing, pinching our apples? And with that, we all jumped. And of course, I jumped into a thing of stinging nettles. And I went home covered in stinging nettles. And my mum said, that serves you right. You shouldn't go up there scrumping, you know. No, but if there was a wedding, us kids used to congregate at the church gate, which most of the weddings were held, and we wait there for the bride and groom to come out and they'd throw us pennies. So we all used to scrabble for pennies. We used to think it was wonderful. There's a wedding up at the church, come on, we'll go and see if we can get some money. We were always trying to get money, you know. We had a river running through Trethomas, well, Machen, Trethomas, up to Caerphilly, and up through the valley, and it's called the Rumney River. It was as black as the ace of spades. Couldn't get no fish or anything. It was all the muck coming from the pits. We never played in it because we were too scared, you know, and sometimes people were drowned. But, and then they had a huge clearing out. I think it must have been in the 60s. Yeah, the 60s. It was cleared out because then the pits were starting to close down. And now it's as clear as anything. And there's fish in there and everything. And it's a beautiful walk. Opposite where I lived, there was a big farm. And my brother John, he had a motorbike and he used to go down to the farm just to test his motorbike out. And of course, the farmer used to tell him off, like. But my mum used to say to me, go down to the farm, Mr. John, and see if his wife can give us some apples, or let us have some apples. So I used to go down there, Mrs. John would be there in the kitchen. And I say, hello, Mrs. John. And she said, oh, hello. She said, what you come for? I said, Mum want to know, have you got any apples we could buy off you? Yes, she said, I'll get you some apples. And perhaps she'd get me a bowl full of apples and put them in a bag for me, you know, and I'd bring them back. We had the side streets, all the side streets, which we used to go up as kids. And what we did was, starting in Birch Grove, where I played, we used to have chalk. And then we used to use arrows. We used to cross arrows. You'd have to go right on in front and go up wherever you can, putting the arrows down on the ground. And then your friends had to then try and come and find you. And we used to go all up the side streets with these arrows. Looking back now, the kids would never do that now. And then we'd go up the side streets, and if there was bonfire night, you have a bonfire, then you go up to see other people's bonfires or their fireworks, because Mum would only allow to have a few like spinning wheels or something, because she couldn't afford it. And we'd have apples, dunking apples, and then put your head in the water, try and pick an apple out. Yeah, Halloween night, yeah. Mum used to send me down to the Muric stores. She'd send me to the butcher's. And she'd say, Phil, go down to the butcher's and say that Mum wants a shoulder of lamb. And it's got to be lean. So down I go, and I can't remember his name now. But I said, Mum asked, can she have a small shoulder of lamb, but it's got to be lean. So when he wraps it all up, because Mum will pay it at the end of the week. That's how it used to be in those days. You have it in the week and then you have to pay it at the end of the week. And I come back with it. No, she said, there's too much fat on this. Go and take it back. And I had to take it back, and he said, and he changed it then, but one that's a bit leaner. Oh, the things. We used to go walking around Rudgery. I used to pick watercress in the little rivers for Mum. And Rudgery is a lovely place to walk, but looking back now, I don't think youngsters walk it like it now, you know. But we didn't know any different, you see. That was a Sunday. We used to go walking. Didn't like going to chapel. Mum used to give us a penny to put in the box. We didn't always put it in. We used to go to the sweet shop, guess. As far as Mum was concerned, that penny went in the church fund. We used to go there, sometimes twice a day, but I used to try and get out of it. So I used to try and go once. And then us kids would go off playing, you know. But they didn't really like you playing on Sunday, because that is God-fearing in those days. You could, some would go to church 3 times a day. But the only time we ever went up to church when it was weddings or funerals, because my father's buried up there, so is my grandfather and my grandmother. But my mother, she's up the road in the churchyard. In the cinema, at the bottom, was a room where it was for gentlemen only, and the miners could go in there and read their newspapers and that. Women weren't allowed to go in there. And to the next of it, there was a little room where you could buy sweeties before you went into the pictures. And you could have a drink as well, like an orange juice or something like that. And then we'd go in the cinema. Well, my father, when he died, I was 5 at the time. I don't know whether I put that in there, did I? Where my father was laid out in the front room. Yes. I think I did, yeah. And, you know, I never forgot that, you know. It's something, you know, my mother taking me in and making me kiss my dad. You know, you wouldn't do that today to a child. And then my father, my grandfather, my sister was looking after him, and of course he died when we were in the cinema. But my family, all my brothers and sisters, I got on well with all of them. But the oldest 2 were in the war, so I never saw a lot of them, you know. The house where I was born in, that is now over 100 years old. And my grandparents bought that house in, they didn't buy it, it was the council, and they rented it. And that was in, I think, 1920. My grandmother lived there with my grandfather, and then their son got married, which was my father, to my mother, to my mother, Florrie, and they went to live there. I used to love going dancing with my friend up the Palais in Caerphilly on a Saturday, and sometimes a Tuesday if I could afford it, because my first job was £2.17 and 6, and £2 of that was to my mum, and then I had the 17 and 6, and with that I used to put £0.50 to my clothing club so I could buy my clothes with, and the rest was bus fares and going to the pictures or the dance, you know. I'd be all the girls at one side and all the boys were other, but the boys, because they came from poor families, I mean, I was from a poor family, but my mum had standards. And some of them, they were the Watsons. I mean, she had 28 children, the Watsons, and Teddy wasn't in my class. And when they had this dancing, they said, come on, girls, come on, boys. Girls one side, boys the other. And they said, right, when the music starts, you go and pick your partner. So, of course, as soon as the music starts, us girls used to rush for the better-looking boys, or the ones who were more tidy. And they said, no, come on, girls, that's not fair. Come on. And, of course, some of the girls had to go and dance with them. I might have been one of them, where we had to dance with them. I think I danced with Teddy Watson. Teddy used to live opposite my mother's house, little bungalow, and he used to keep pigeons, you know. And Mum used to complain about the pigeons pooping everywhere, you know. I used to love it because the side of our house at the time when I was a kid, it was all green hills. And then after the war, they started building houses for the men coming home from the war, you know. And a lot of the men working on the houses were Irish. And I was about 7 or 8, and Mum used to call us in for tea. And she said, "You're taking ages coming in." I said, "Oh, I was chatting to those men, Mum," he said. I said, "They're really nice." I said, "They're Irish." He said, "No," she said, "you mustn't be talking to those men." I said, "Why?" I said, "They're so friendly." Lo and behold, and they're working for Wimpy's. Lo and behold, I married an Irishman who eventually worked for Wimpy's on site. But when I was a kid, when you're young, you couldn't wait to move away. You wanted to move away to get money, you know, to have some money in your pocket. That's when I left home when I was 17. Yeah. And because my mother was in America at the time, my sister signed for me to go in the Wrens. And my mother in America, she was so annoyed about it. Because she was hoping that when she come back, our Hazel be moved out and I'd be there as the youngest one to stay. And my sister said, "No, Phil, you go. This is your time now. Otherwise, if you stick here, you will never go and you'll be there with Mum all the time." And she gave me the chance to move out. And that's when I started moving away. But I loved every minute of it, you know. I should have stayed in the Wrens, really, but then saying that, if I stayed in the Wrens, my life would have been different. I wouldn't have been married to a granddad, and I wouldn't have had my son and my 3 lovely grandchildren. So I've got a lot of blessings, you know. I count my blessings every day. So I'm a very fortunate lady, and I'm a very lucky lady, you know. So I've had a good childhood. I had a good teenage life, you know, and my adult life has been good. I haven't wanted for anything. And my husband was a good provider. So what more do you want?